Welcome to the Mr. J test. Today's episode is letter F for flash forward. Woohoo! So this flash forward is actually not the most recent flash forward show that was on ABC. This is a different flash forward show from the 90s, which actually aired on Saturday mornings on ABC and then ended up moving to the Disney Channel. And it stars Ben Foster and Jewel Staite. Ben Foster, who you know from a lot of movies from the 2000s, including my favorite of his performances, Angel in X3, X-Men United. I think that's what it was called. Oh my gosh. What is Ben Foster in a lot of movies? Look him up. He's fabulous. Also, Jewel Staite. Jewel Staite is an actor who I know most recently from the LA Complex, but she has done a lot of stuff as well. So look her up too. Flash forward from the late 90s. It was a show about two 8th graders named Becca and Tucker who were born on the same day and live right next to each other, and they've been best friends their whole lives. And now that they're 13, they're still going to be best friends, and it's going to be an exciting year. Becca is played by Jewel Staite, and Tucker is played by Ben Foster. They also have their two best friends, respectively. Becca's best friend is Christine, and Tucker's other best friend is Miles. They all hang out together, and it's a really fun show. It's very sweet. It's sweet, and it is focused on what it's like to be in 8th grade. So I watched it, really loved it, and now we're going to talk about it. Does it pass the Mr. J test? So, forgot to tell you about that. Went way into flash forward without explaining the test for those of you who don't know. So on the Mr. J test, I look at some of my favorite shows from A to Z, and then I examine whether a series first passes the Bechdel test. So the Bechdel test determines whether a project has two female characters who talk to each other about something other than a man. Then we move to the Mr. J test, where we examine whether a project has two non-white characters who talk to each other about something other than a white person. And finally, we have the unicorn bonus round. Ding, 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 ding. And we see whether a show has two non-white female characters who talk to each other about something other than a white person or a man. So let's start with Flash Forward. Flash Forward does pass the Bechdel test, and it passes it early in the pilot episode, Season 1, Episode 1. What scene passes the Bechdel test? It's when Becca and Christine see each other for the first time in 8th grade. They're really excited about 8th grade, and they talk about being 8th graders. Wow! So yes, the show does pass the Bechdel test. Moving on to the Mr. J test. Now, unfortunately, the show does not pass the Mr. J test because Miles, the only black character in the series, has no one else to talk to. He talks to his other friends who all happen to be white. So the show, unfortunately, does not pass the Mr. J test. It does not pass the unicorn bonus round either because there are very few non-white female characters on this show. If any. Before we end the episode, let's talk about some of my favorite episodes and some of my favorite things about the show. I love that the characters re-wear clothes that they've worn in previous episodes like regular people do. I'm sure this was partially due to the fact that they didn't have a huge budget, which is it's very easy to see on the show, and the acting is really good. I enjoy that. The stories are fun and age appropriate, but not talking down to people like, you're a little kid, you can watch this silly little show. It's actually like, oh, this is what it feels like. It feels like stuff that 8th graders would go through in a Degrassi type way without the sex and drugs. And both Canadian. Okay. Woo! 3 of my favorite episodes. So first of my favorite episode is called Mud Pack. This is where Becca and her friend Max want to infiltrate a 9th grader party where they have a mudslide, And one of the reasons it's one of my favorite episodes is that it has Iceman from X-Men. Oh, just realized now as I'm filming the show that Ben Foster and Sean Astin were both in Flash Forward and both in X-Men The Last Stand. That's what it's called. That's the third one. Brilliance. Okay, so yay for me. Woo! Ding ding aha moment with Canadian productions. Okay, next 2 is Double Bill. Becca and Christine go on a double date with Ryan Gosling and one of his friends. And this is before anyone was like, oh my gosh, Ryan Gosling. He was on the Mickey Mouse Club, wasn't he? I guess so. And I was like, Ryan Gosling, he's funny. So yeah, it's funny. And then he comes back on another episode, and that one's funny too. So check it out. It is which one is it? So Mud Pack was season 1, episode 19, and Double Bill was season 1, episode 11. Third favorite episode, Expose. This is when a journalist visits their school, Parkview Middle School, to take the pulse of a generation. Tucker and his friends make up all these stories about what 8th graders are really like today. I liked this episode and I watched it again. It was funny when I watched it the first time when I was in high school. It's still funny now because there are still people who are insistent upon categorizing people like millennials as they're so weird. We don't understand them. We're adults. They're kids. And they just made up stuff and people just wrote it down. They're like, that isn't us at all. Maybe you should get a clue. I think you should watch Expose as well for journalists making generalizations about large groups of people that are completely false and have no support or research to back it up. Best part of Expose is that reporters in TV shows will believe anything as long as it's dumb enough. Favorite part of that episode. There's also the Planet of the Apes episode. I think it's called Apeward Bound, where Tucker and Miles try to sneak off from a field trip so that they can watch an all-day marathon at their Cineplex that's showing all 5 Planet of the Apes movies, which the whole logic of it makes no sense. I would love to see an all-day Planet of the Apes marathon at the movie theater, but the concept of them trying to get out of a field trip for it would probably be over 10 hours if it's back to back, and they'd have to get up at 6 and then leave possibly at 6, but it's bright all day. So you watch it and you'll be like, what? That makes no sense. But it's still fun, and I like Planet of the Apes too. So that is the end of this episode. Thank you for joining us. If you're keeping track in the alphabet, our next letter is G. So I will see you next time. Bye-bye.